Welcome back to Kafka Internal's Crashcasts. I'm your host Sheila, and today we're continuing our journey through the fundamentals of Apache Kafka. We're in the Core Concepts chapter, and our focus today is on producers and consumers. Joining me as always is our Kafka expert, Victor. Hello, Victor.
Hi, Sheila. Great to be here. Producers and consumers are indeed crucial components of Kafka's architecture, so I'm excited to dive into this topic.
Before we start, let's make sure our listeners are up to speed. We've already covered what Kafka is, its use cases, and a basic architecture overview. Today, we'll build on that foundation to understand producers and consumers. Now, to kick things off, I have a quiz question for our listeners. Ready?
Absolutely. I'm sure our listeners are eager to test their knowledge.
All right. Here's the question. In a Kafka system with multiple producers and consumers, can a consumer read messages in the exact order they were produced across all producers? Think about it, and we'll reveal the answer at the end of the episode.
Ooh, that's an intriguing question, Sheila. It touches on some important aspects of Kafka's behavior. I'm looking forward to discussing this later in the episode.
Great. Now let's start with the basics. Victor, could you explain what producers and consumers are in the context of Kafka?
Certainly. In simple terms, producers are applications that publish or write data to Kafka, while consumers are applications that subscribe to or read data from Kafka. Think of Kafka as a massive distributed message queue where producers put messages in and consumers take messages out.
That makes sense. So, if I understand correctly, producers create the data that flows through Kafka, and consumers process that data. Is that right?
Exactly, Sheila. That's a great way to put it. To use an analogy, you can think of Kafka as a restaurant kitchen. Producers are like the chefs who prepare dishes and place them on the counter, while consumers are like the waitstaff who pick up the dishes and serve them to customers.
I love that analogy. It really helps visualize the process. Now, how do producers and consumers interact with Kafka itself?
Well, producers and consumers don't interact directly with each other. Instead, they communicate through Kafka topics. Producers write messages to specific topics, and consumers read messages from specific topics. This decoupling is one of Kafka's key strengths.
Interesting. So, it's like the chefs in our restaurant analogy don't hand dishes directly to the waitstaff, but instead place them on a specific counter for pickup. Could you elaborate on why this decoupling is important?
Absolutely. This decoupling provides several benefits. First, it allows for scalability. You can add more producers or consumers without affecting the others. Second, it provides fault tolerance. If a consumer fails, it doesn't affect the producers or other consumers. Lastly, it allows for flexibility in message processing. Consumers can process messages at their own pace.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I've heard terms like partitions mentioned in relation to producers and consumers. How do partitions come into play?
Great question. Partitions are a way of dividing a topic into multiple parts. When a producer writes a message, it can specify which partition the message goes to. This is often done based on a key associated with the message. Consumers, on the other hand, can be organized into consumer groups, where each partition is read by only one consumer in the group.
Wow, that sounds like it adds another layer of complexity. Why would we want to use partitions?
Partitions serve several purposes. They allow for parallel processing of messages, which improves throughput. They also enable data locality, where you can ensure related messages are processed by the same consumer. Additionally, partitions are the unit of parallelism in Kafka. You can have as many consumers in a group as there are partitions.
I see. It sounds like partitions are crucial for Kafka's scalability. Are there any common misconceptions about producers and consumers that our listeners should be aware of?
Definitely. One common misconception is that messages are automatically deleted after being consumed. In reality, Kafka retains all messages for a configurable period of time, regardless of whether they've been consumed. Another misconception is that consumers always read messages in real time. In fact, consumers can read from any point in a topic's history, as long as the messages haven't been deleted due to retention policies.
Those are important points to keep in mind. As we wrap up, could you share some best practices for working with producers and consumers?
Certainly. For producers, it's important to choose appropriate keys for partitioning to ensure related messages end up in the same partition. For consumers, using consumer groups effectively can greatly improve scalability. Also, be mindful of your offset management strategy. That's keeping track of which messages have been read to ensure you're processing messages exactly as intended.
Thank you, Victor. Those are valuable tips. Now, let's return to our quiz question. In a Kafka system with multiple producers and consumers, can a consumer read messages in the exact order they were produced across all producers?
Yes. The answer is, it depends. Within a single partition, Kafka guarantees that messages will be read in the order they were written. However, across multiple partitions, there's no guarantee of global ordering. So if you have multiple producers writing to different partitions, a consumer might not read the messages in the exact global order they were produced.
That's fascinating. It really highlights the importance of understanding how partitioning works in Kafka. To summarize today's episode, we've learned that producers write data to Kafka topics while consumers read from them. This decoupled architecture provides scalability and fault tolerance. We also discussed partitions and their role in parallel processing and data organization.
Excellent summary, Sheila. Understanding producers and consumers is crucial for anyone working with Kafka, and I hope our listeners now have a solid grasp of these concepts.
Thank you, Victor. In our next episode, we'll be diving into Kafka brokers, so be sure to tune in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Kafka Internals Crashcasts and leave us a rating. Your support helps us continue producing this content. Until next time, happy Kafkaing.